wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of Iraq. Of Ukraine.
Wars have been fought over oil. In a short matter of time, they will be fought over wars.
Let's read this tweet. Look, someone very dear to me lives in Tel Aviv, and I am worried sick about her. I'm asking y'all to redirect your anger towards the fascist, genocidal Netanyahu government and the systems of cruelty that have led to this, and not towards terrified civilians. A little compassion, please. Now, Marcus, you get to guess, all right, what's going to come after this? All right, what do you think is going to come after the thing that I just read?
I can only assume she's ableist somehow. I have no idea.
Somehow. Okay, you're going to say she's ableist somehow after this. Okay. All right. Is that your final answer, Marcus? Are you ready to bet on the showcase?
This is the worst game I've ever played.
Okay. All right. Let's look at her other tweet right quick, chat. My online dom lives in Israel. Because she's so stressed about living next to a war zone, I haven't properly gotten off since October 7th. Ceasefire now. I just wanted everyone to come together in peace. Me in particular, not trying to be flip. I'm just such a ridiculous situation to be in. How you doing, Marcus? How you doing, buddy?
This can't be real. This can't be real. This cannot be real.
Yeah, please. Man. Yeah. Where's my
no,
Scully? So I don't know. Just some things to think about or whatever. Just some just some people. You know, the internet contains multitudes. Okay.
Yeah,
we got a lot of different people out there. I think Grom was right about Blue Sky. It's a hive of scum and villainy. I think I don't think it's any better. Like, people are like, well, Twitter's bad. Well, yeah, but that's not because of Elon. All right, that's just social media. I think.
No,
I think it's all. I think it's all just going to get there eventually, okay?
Yeah, okay. And it's easy to say from someone who never got over like 1K followers. But
okay, like, yeah, you use your Twitter so much. That's so true.
I was a poster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I was too. I was almost 10K, and then I was like, this isn't worth it, actually.
Well, if I'd worked so hard for nothing, I probably would have given up too.
Yeah, I don't. I'd rather go to like an actual like in-person third space, Marcus. Okay,
yeah,
that's what I discovered about my life.
60K, no big deal. But
yeah.
But that's the thing is, like, Twitter was bad, but it was a known bad.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Twitter was like smoking cigarettes or having that extra beer when you know you shouldn't. You know, you're taking the calculated risk.
Yeah.
But now it is, you know, a destroyer of worlds. And like, that's where Facebook, that's not the worst thing about Facebook isn't seeing your uncle's thoughts. So, you know, the worst thing about Facebook is initiating violent coups and gang massacres in countries.
No,
you know.
okay, first of all, I'm going to stop you right there. The worst thing about Facebook is the targeted advertising. And you're like, oh, actually, this looks like a pretty dope sweater. And then it's quite literally made out of the cheapest rayon that you could imagine. So you're just like, well, I'll never find this design anywhere else. It's ruined for me. It's a cat in an astronaut suit. That sounds great, right? No, wrong. No one will ever make it correctly. You can only get it from the shitty place that's worse Temu.
Okay.
That's the worst part about Facebook.
Then you've got the initiation of violence across the world.
Yeah, and then there's also that stuff. Yeah, that's probably bad too.
It's probably bad. But now, you know, that's like, I think one of the worst things for Twitter, or at least Elon buying Twitter was like, now they're doing some of that too. And especially when it comes to like fascist and right wing governments just using, just saying, hey, lock down these journalists, lock down these dissented voices, or give us information on who these people are. And Elon Musk is just like, well, we got to follow the law. This is concerning, some fucking bullshit, and then Brazil says, hey, these 4 accounts need to be, per your own terms of service, these 4 accounts need to be shut down. Yeah. And then, he wanted to go to the mat on that one. So it's worse now. It was always bad, but yeah, it's horribly worse now.
Yeah. I think that's true. I just, man, and I think they said like, 50-60% of like daily active users, now kind of wandering away from the website. So it's just really the perverts now that are stuck there, okay? Like, it's just really the people that cannot like find solace in their lives that are stuck posting there. Yeah, it's Nazis and posting perverts. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I respect the posters, Couldn't be me. I needed to treasure my mental health,
Yeah. I mean, dude, sweet brain activity that is always positive.
Shit's important.
All right, we got to talk about some real shit, dog.
Yeah, we do. And I promised chat that we would. So, Marcus, we're going to get to the bottom of who the best Big Ten team is. Now, obviously, I know that you're going to say Ohio State, okay? Right? But Yes.
Ohio State.
The Ohio
University.
State. Yeah, sure. I'm just saying personally, and, there's no favoritism here. I'm just saying, for me, I like Northwestern. All right? Part of the original Big Ten, not one of the fucking add-ons or anything. Northwestern University, what are you talking about? Out of Evanston, Illinois? Excuse me?
What?
So I'm sorry they get a bigger endowment than you every year, but...
Isn't that a medical school?
My God, wow. We got some real hating here. So again, also, they have categorically the best uniform colors out of the Big Ten, okay? I'm sorry that yours aren't fucking... What are you working with? You're working with red and fucking silver?
Case Western?
Disgusting. Okay?
Best Western? Is that...
Best Western? Sorry, they've got the style. They've got the potential.
I'm not really even familiar who you're talking about. No,
I know. I hear what you're saying. Yeah,
have they won a Big Ten championship in your life?
Wow. How dare you? It's not all about who wins the most championships, Marcus, okay?
That's exactly what we're talking about. You brought up who is the best Big Ten team.
I'm just saying they're my favorite. Yeah, they're not Ohio, and that's important, okay? And they're not Oregon, and I think that's good for everybody. Goddamn pretenders of the throne just getting added in for no reason.
I don't recognize any of these new teams, okay?
No. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, all the shit that just gets added in, it's like, what are you even here for?
Texas, fucking UCLA or something. Like, you're not Big Ten teams. Get out of here.
Yeah. University of Maryland. What are you doing
in that state?
Who added you?
Yeah.
College Park? Get the fuck out of here.
Christ. Insane.
Yeah. Anyways, no, real things that we're going to talk about, of course.
I hate whatever you're going to bring up next. But
no.
Just go and get it over with.
Talk about real things, obviously. Look at Mark Kelly on the screen right now. Disgusting. So how's it? Wait, first of all, I need you to tell me about your farm experience so far. How are you feeling about it?
No, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
super chill. Like,
it's important to get a head start on, the agrarian lifestyle we're gonna have to pick up in like 10 years after World War III kind of devastates the,
Yeah, you give it 10 years. I'm thinking a shorter time.
I'm thinking it'll be a little while before we really break into the good stuff.
Well, no. I mean, it's dope. And I mean, like, you know, Brad, and like, a lot of people are familiar with him, touring news and stuff like that. And, it's kind of an interesting thing. You meet a lot of people in this world.
Yeah.
And a lot of people got a lot of dreams. A lot of people just randomly say, hey, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
You know, and like, oh, I want to do that. Oh, I want to learn to do oil paintings or some shit, you know? And they don't, they buy all the shit and they never learn how to do oil paintings. But a few years ago, Brad was like, I'm going to learn how to farm.
Yeah.
And he just did it.
Doing it. Yeah.
And it's like, so I was like, not only just like, hey, what's the viability of this, you know, people engaging in these things so that we can feed people? How do we break into these types of things? And for me, I like getting down into the real boring shit. Okay. Yeah. Like the real like bureaucratic, like how much space and resources go in, what are the results out? Is this something that is, you know, and these are building blocks, these are structural things. And so, you know, how much invested into the people doing the work is necessary to get the best product out, you know, or I should say best results. Product is capitalism talk. But he's doing, so he does like organic shit and like organic shit. You know what I'm saying? I haven't seen this motherfucker pour not one chemical on nothing. You know, they got an electric fence for the critters. And I mean, we spent the day pulling weeds, taking a bunch of shit from a compost heap and pouring it on beds to get rotated. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Just farm shit.
Yeah.
Farm shit,
man. Yeah.
Yee. But it's pretty dope. But everything he's got going on in the space, you know, that he's been afforded by some nice folks here in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
But yeah. I got to go to a Hannaford again. That was nice.
All right. Did you have enough time to go down into the mines and fight slimes until you got to the lowest floor that you could?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. No, hey, listen, I love farming, man. I grew up with great proximity to rural Virginia, going to my parents' like friends' farms and stuff like that. I learned, and also my shithead aunt and uncle are dairy farmers. So by the time I was like, I want to say 8 or 9, I probably knew how to like milk a cow pretty good. It's fun stuff, you know? Yeah, more livestock farming than like
Then
you know what I mean, than like vegetable farming or anything like that. But still, like I learned, you know.
Well, I think that especially with food, you know, and then when you get into like, well, food and material, you know, because, you know, it's a very, like the first thing is, you know, cabbage and shit.
Yeah.
But like wood is a sustainable, you know, if done correctly, right? Wood can be a sustainable agricultural process.
Yeah.
You know, hemp and I mean, cotton, you know, like there, you know, things that we grow then utilize as not but
textiles. Yeah, sure.
That
was good. I like that pantomime. I think that was really important. You know?
So people are visual learners. So you're welcome.
Yeah. I understood what you meant.
But then, you know, with animals and, you know, livestock, whatever you want to fucking call it, you know, there's a whole nother element to the system, you know, because that's where everything is just fascinating to me because, you know, seeing a skyscraper, there's a lot of intricacies in that. But a farm, almost the same amount of intricacy, just in a different way, especially if you have the systems, or especially if you have the food that you're growing or the livestock that you're cultivating working in conjunction with one another. And so, and that's what what Brad talk about. And these are like a lot of like indigenous growing practices.
Yeah, sure.
Had the same type of, logic to it of if, you do these things in congruence with each other and it all performs better and better and better.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just all fascinating to me. And so it's really dope to just getting out here and just hearing, Brad talk about what he's doing.
It's pretty sick. I like that.
Yeah.
A little jealous. I'm just looking at the rain outside. That's it. All I got going on.
Oh yeah. Just you getting the reminiscence.
tail ends of the storm system and everything. Yeah.
Well, fuck. I mean, we might as well just start there. That shit was
good segue. I did it. I meant
devastating. Yeah.
Wild, and I was talking about this morning, the lack of kind of taste of flavor for the, not just Biden, not that just the White House, but also anyone within like the Harris campaign apparatus, like just trying to get proximity to this is crazy to me, like Trump's like, I'll be in Valdosta tonight, like I'm going to be passing out supplies. I'm going to be doing this and that. And it's like, because everybody wants to avoid a George Bush situation, it's supposed to be common knowledge that you don't want to be that guy. Right.
Well, that's and I think with that, dude, is that there's been a normalization of, and that's where like initially it was interesting because I saw like the first Biden statement.
Yeah.
After it hit, after like landfall or whatever they call it, was, already signed the federal emergency declaration.
Yeah. We've already done
and
this
we
stuff,
will
guys.
visit the area as soon as the president's presence does not cause an undue strain on the efforts, right? Yeah. So this is like now a built-in thing of like, hey, and I think that there's some, especially for Trump, dog. I don't like. He is really trying.
Absolutely, 100%.
He is putting himself.
He wants to fucking get in there. He's hungry. And again, like the thing that I think of, right, is like Kamala's selling herself as an underdog these past couple months. But Trump's the one that's behaving like an underdog because he is realistically like he's the one that has to make up ground and he's the one that's behaving like one. Meanwhile, she's just like, sorry, all I've got time for today is 30 minutes to talk about how Iran is the single greatest threat to, American society. I just and I thought about this too with regards to, Ohio, where it's just like you could sit down and have and you could say whatever you want, like, well, it lends credence to what JD Vance has said, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, these are very vulnerable communities of immigrant groups that are being victimized by JD Vance and all of the people that fucking, worship him in Ohio. And it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't care if it's politically expedient,
Did you see that video of the owner of that like manufacturing plant?
Yeah.
And he's talking about the Haitian workers.
Yeah.
And then he starts talking how shitty Ohio people are.
Yeah.
They're just like horrific.
Yeah.
Get that.
Just like,
like Kamala Harris, go there. Right.
So that's because the type of things that are in my head. It's just like
she's already they're already going for the Nikki Haley Republicans.
Right.
Like that manufacturing owner, that horrific person who can only conceive of people's value as to how they work for him.
Yeah.
That motherfucker is the constituency that they're going after. They should have gone there because really too, and like that whole little girl was me shit. Yeah. Play that there, right? Like, hey, there are immigrant families like Kamala Harris, like my family, that come here and they get jobs and their kids go to school and become attorney generals and then president, that type of shit. You know what I'm saying? Like this is the American dream right here. These are legal immigrants that are working, do all that type of shit and try and actually shore up some of that conservative, stuff. And you could do that without being morally correct on any of the issues.
Right.
You can avoid all of the real policy things that you should be doing, especially as it pertains to foreign policy, because the United States foreign policy right now as it pertains to Haiti is only going to create more Haitian immigrants. I can guarantee you CC the past 200 fucking years.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we're going to continue to uphold that. Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't disagree. It's just like, again, I'm just trying to understand the poor political calculus. And I understand part of it is that they took over the Biden team and they neglected to just fire all of them. All right. Like Jen Dillon still has a job. Why? Why are these people still around? But again, what I mean, when we're talking about the storm system, we're talking about the hurricane that came through. I'm not saying go to Asheville. Right. I'm not saying go to Chimney Rock. I mean, you can't go to Chimney Rock anymore.
You go to Atlanta.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, get in that proximity. Go to Atlanta. Hell, go
Atlanta
to parts
got
of
fucked up,
Florida,
and you need Atlanta,
right?
And this is where the thing is,
you're putting Trump on the back foot if you go to those outer parts of Florida around Pensacola, right? You start hitting some of those purple areas.
That's a little bit deeper too. There's the politicking and campaigning is one thing. The logistics of these people voting.
Yes.
2 swing states got real fucked up.
Yeah.
We are 5 weeks out. Are these, so this is by no means the most important thing.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? To the Kamala Harris campaign, this should be a very, very important thing to you is there a mechanism for all the people who have been sent away from the place that you are actually trying to just win barely? Yep. Are they even going to be there anymore? Do they even give a shit anymore? This is something where I don't know. This is something that is novel.
Yeah.
I don't, point me to a devastating, climate event occurring 5 weeks before an election where 2 swing states were involved. Or at least, where when you talk Georgia and North Carolina, they were really, really going for those.
Yeah.
They the Kamala Harris campaign was really pushing for them, and
Absolutely.
definitely for good reason. They're within reach, it's striking distance. Mm-hmm. I mean, especially when you got fucking black Nazi porn freak in in North Carolina.
Did you see the latest CBS poll there for that governor race?
Oh God!
It's like plus 17%.
Oh damn!
This guy's gonna take Shapiro margins in North Carolina. That's crazy, dude.
Hey, dog.
I don't know what to tell you. This guy's gonna have bigger margins than Roy Cooper at the end of the day.
Fucking Gooners are gonna have to wait a little bit longer. Gooners,
little longer, right?
Your representation's not coming just yet.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But no, that's well, I think and so for campaign shit, that's they got a problem. They got a problem. Our country is fucked. I don't think most people probably realize that, some of these those towns are never coming back.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
They're just going to slowly degrade more and more of a time before it's just the elderly and the fucking mayor.
I mean, we've already seen this is,
we've seen this multiple times. This has happened so many times already. Yeah. I mean, this happens with NAFTA, right? And this happens with climate crisis, especially when it comes to flooding, because once you get flooding in there and mold, poverty plus mold equals dead town.
Yeah, that's done. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw this just a couple of years ago in Kentucky, right? With the huge like swaths of flooding that happened there, and the other thing about poverty in these places, these lower income houses, is they are built in disadvantageous places with regards to climate change. They are built on floodplains, places that you would not normally build homes, but it's just like, well, yeah, we've got dams, we've got like limiting factors that'll keep these things dry enough until you start having more exaggerated and exacerbated like climate conditions that lead to these places getting torn apart. And that's what we saw in Kentucky, right? So these places are already at risk, and now done, and there is, you're right, there's no going back. Like, once these places are water damaged, like who's making like $40,000 a year and is just going to rebuild their fucking home in rural North Carolina? You know what I mean? Like, that ain't gonna happen. And FEMA is gonna do their best to deny like funds to these people, or make it as hard as possible for them to get relief checks. The process of getting, funding, is horrific. Yeah, it is just awful, and the point too of that is like a lot of this does come off of like getting the insurance companies to pay first and then FEMA coming afterwards. Yes. And like it's and that's why this, and for communities that are like, oh, hey, this epic flood happens, because what the next, the other aspect of this is no community in the United States is prepared. There is no community that has actually invested in the infrastructure systems to handle the stress of these new generations of storm. Yes. We have created a new God that is more powerful. Okay. And we have not built up the fucking, armor to be able to fight it. Like so much of our, like almost all of our nation, and like you look at like New York City and there's water spraying sideways into the subway systems. Incredible, honestly. Yeah. I mean, that's right. I watched like, Tennessee, I think it was from Tennessee, right? Like the one video from AccuWeather where the guy's like, watch out, talking to this other person that's standing close to a bridge, and it just boop and just washes away, never to be seen again. It's like, okay, well, we're going to be replacing that, what's going to be the plan for that one? I guess maybe, who knows? And we just have a lot of infrastructure that we built out that just is not, once it fails, it's just going to fail. Yeah. Realistically,
catastrophic failure is the term. Yes. Where it crumbles down. Yes. It's not, oh, hey, this one part fell, it just house of cards comes down. Yeah. And oh my God. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Biden's infrastructure bill may fix it,
Build back better, Ben.
Wow. Incredible. I will say, I've seen he's got to be pressed, about that whole not getting enough credit thing. Because when I was in Philly, I saw 2 different work sites that had a big prominent fucking sign that was like, this was funded by Biden's Build Back Better plan. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Just trying to get, like, hang a flag with that shit on it. Like, just so you guys know. Well, don't you love your train station? It was me. Yeah, I get it, man.
This is the thing. If you actually had a person who could move. Yeah. Get me every fucking gold shovel for every groundbreaking of every construction thing you could string together and make
Yeah.
the schedule. You know, like this is the thing where like they have no semblance of how to bring the news to their policy.
Yeah.
Like they'll go on to these interviews and, you know, like the news will just ask one of the, whatever the fuck, oh, Trump said this, blah, blah, right? And like, well, why aren't you guys talking about the new Scranton, Pennsylvania battery plant, you know? And it was like, well, why the fuck would we? This is not Scranton 13.
Bureaucracy's boring, man. Like, people don't
you
think about
have
that
to
shit.
go there, right?
Yeah.
You have to go there, and then your press gaggle who follows you everywhere will cover it. It's so stupid. I hate them. I really do not like
All
them.
you gotta do
It's not hard. It's very easy.
Oh. Gotta be like, you think, I don't know, you think about like movies, television show, and you see like a mayor with the hard hat, you know, at the site. It's just like, yeah, you gotta do that shit, man.
Yeah.
I know your body's decaying, you know, and every day the void calls a little closer. But I mean, honestly, if you want the credit, yeah, I mean, you're only going to get it from like local sources and shit. It's not like realistically you're going to be getting national credit for a little puff. Like, well, the thing about infrastructure just takes so fucking long, man. Like, you're just not, you know.
And that's why, like, there's cycles.
Yeah.
And like there, you know, especially too, is like you come into a presidency at 4 years, you know, there's a short term, medium term, and long term. Mm-hmm. They pass legislation that actually sets up a lot of good things.
Yeah.
I'd say the things where they completely like, it's like close, right? It's very there, you know, I'll give the Biden administration, they're kind of close. They were kind of close.
God, hold up. I'm just looking at Steve Kornacki here. This shit's so like doom killing right now.
Oh my God.
It's like polling averages at this point. Hillary +3, Joe Biden +9. Where's Kamala sit? You know, right around, I think she's like +2, +3, like national average.
We'll see.
If they've stopped counting like Rasmussen and everything like that.
+3. Nice.
Man.
Oh yeah.
Terrifying. Anyways, keep going. You were on a thing. I was just looking at that. I looked over for a second. I was like, God. You were talking about like, you know, there's a lot of things that this sets up, and I don't disagree with you. Like they're setting these things up. But.
Yeah. Short term, medium term, long term. The short term child tax credit didn't make it permanent, but that was an immediate thing that could have continued, you know, like right now, this helps right now. Medium term.
Right now. And that's the last we heard from him, chat. I'll miss him just as much as you all will, honestly. I get it. Back to food reviews, chat. Obviously, last week week before last, I had COVID last week. Sorry, I miss you all. Week before last, we did a food review on the Coca-Cola Oreos. I have to say, the Coca-Cola itself obviously was not good. The Oreos a little better. You know, this week, I got out. Hear me out here. I love Taco Bell. I think it's and I'm not saying because it's authentic, obviously. It's like someone dreamed, right, of Tex-Mex food, you know, and then tried to write it down on a piece of paper before that like left their mind. Like that's what Taco Bell is. And that's okay. So, Taco Bell this week or last week, something like that, brought a new flavor box into the mix, okay? And that in and of itself is not special. It's just a taco, a Doritos Locos taco, and a Gordita Crunch. Those are delicious in and of themselves, but it's not anything special or new. But what they did was, it's a Disha, a hot sauce Disha box, Disha Hot. What they did was they brought a new sauce on board for a limited time. And I gotta say, chat, 9.5 out of 10, honestly. One of the best sauces that Taco Bell has ever brought on. And listen, I don't say this lightly. one of the best sauces that I think they've really conceived of. It's got a nice smoky like flavor to it. It's got some tomatillo in there, you know? It's great. And again, I'll say it again. I don't think the innovation of Taco Bell lies in the food. The innovation of Taco Bell and the product that they're really selling is their sauce base, you know? You can say whatever you want, but again, even Sean from Hot Ones, you know, would agree with this. Taco Bell has some of the best sauces in the industry, you know? Like, they don't fuck around. That, I think we all know, that Taco Bell Hot or Diablo, the Fire, they're all great, okay? They're all very good hot sauces, you know? They're made to kind of wallpaper over what is a very subpar, like, food experience. And I think they just keep getting better and better with their sauces, you know? Yeah, hey, Wilco, that's all fine too. To your point, they've had their sauces in stores for much longer than other brands. Absolutely. And so the newest one that they have, the Disha hot sauce, incredible. One of the best things that they've made, I think. Marcus, I was just giving another food review while you were gone. I'm making this a running thing whenever that happens to you. I was talking about Taco Bell and how I appreciate Taco Bell, you know? I think it's a fine flavor experience.
Well,
yeah.
You know, Steph had a magical Taco Bell experience when we got to New York.
Oh.
You know, traveling.
Yeah.
Well, when we first got to New York.
Yeah.
And we had to stop in New Jersey because hotels are much cheaper in New Jersey, when you believe it.
That's true. Yeah.
Thank you. Shout out to Subversive History and Johnny Dialectically had picked us up and
pretty good.
Giving us a ride.
Yeah.
Steph, lucky enough to be born not an American citizen, but you know, when you come into town, there's a go-to.
Yes.
And so Steph got to try the Cheez-It Crunch Wrap Supreme.
Okay, all right. I would not. I've tried it, and I would not recommend it.
They put giant Cheez-Its in the Crunch Wrap. Like, it tastes like they just put giant Cheez-Its in the Crunch Wrap.
Yeah, it's fine. It exists. It's a food stuff.
It's a thing.
Me, I wouldn't. I just think they just make better things, but it exists.
Yeah, I wasn't hungry. I just had me a nice crisp Baja Blast.
Yeah, there you go. The Baja Blast, again, a thing of innovation. Baja Blast, one of the best Mountain Dews out there. And hats off to Taco Bell for really pioneering that thing, you know? I think they're working on another one right now, a sparkling Lipton iced tea. Yeah.
I hate regular Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
And I actually like Baja Blast.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's normally how it is. A lot of people that are intolerant towards the regular Dew.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty good. Yeah. Good. I'm glad she got a little Taco Bell in. It's important. They sell the zero version in Taco Bell as well now, which is really nice.
Yes,
yeah.
They did.
They sell yeah, and that's super into it. Honestly, delightful. I tried the Baja Blast gelato. It's not gelato. It's a lie. Gelato is supposed to have like milk and eggs. It does not have that.
What is?
It's a Baja Blast icy, basically, is what they've made.
Oh, I should have got one then.
Yeah. It's fine.
I should have got one.
Yeah, if you're into it.
I am.
I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think it really has a lot of good flavor, but you know.
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, when you say like Baja Blast Icy, that sounds really dope, actually.
I mean, just like a frozen ice. Sorry, not an icy, a frozen ice. Think like Rita's Italian Ice, like that. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
I think Rita's Italian Ice is better than that, though. Like it's actually a palatable experience, you know? Yeah, they have a Baja Blast Freeze, and I think that is actually a better product than the Baja Blast Gelato. I don't know. I love Taco Bell, man. It's a cheap garbage food, but you know, what do you want? I'm a sucker for you know, fake Tex-Mex. Same thing with Chipotle. It's like a siren's call. I hadn't had it for like 2 years, and the other day I was just like, you know what? I'm COVID negative. I don't feel bad anymore. I haven't changed that. I right on in Chipotle.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I love Chipotle.
Yeah.
I do. I still get it pretty fucking often. Like,
Hell
and
yeah.
you know what? Like, fuck off to anyone. You know, like I don't care.
Yeah.
I like eating the shit that I like to eat.
Yeah. Same, man. I get it.
Chipotle is one of those things. I like. Like it. That's it. Okay. I know it sucks. I'm gonna drink an IPA right now too. So like, go ahead.
Ooh, look at you. All right.
Shit on me.
Yeah. Yeah. You're living your best life, and I think that's important.
Oh yeah. Which I got me a beer that I used to drink quite a bit when I lived in Portland, Maine. Baxter Brewing, shout out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm familiar.
I don't know. I'm basic in a lot of ways, and
fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I think again, people want to be bougie. You know, like this is the biggest takeaway. 5 minutes until we get to the VP debate. This is the biggest takeaway I want anybody to have listening to ManCon. A lot of people want to be bougie and shit on American staples, all right? Like Taco Bell or Chipotle or, you know, a simple Pabst Blue Ribbon. But honestly, there's a reason that shit's popular, man. Sorry. Like,
I mean, like legit too, though. It's like, I don't want to be that
cost
guy.
effective.
Like, well, actually, you know, but like also too that like Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Yeah.
It's like a 100-year-old fucking recipe.
Sure, man. It's been around forever. They got it. They nailed it in one. Okay? They nailed it in one. Nothing wrong with it. Yeah, it won the blue ribbon twice. Let's go. What do you want?
I mean, out of so many of the beers, you know, I mean, Pabst is still around. It's something that you said. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's something that you said. Pumpkin beer is disgusting, though.
You know what I saw? You know, pumpkin. You're aware of it. You've seen it before. It's from New York. It's a pumpkin beer that gained some prominence because it's a little sweeter. People are into it. You know, they have a caramel pumpkin now.
Oh, is he riding a horse?
Crazy.
Is it like riding a horse?
I don't know if he's riding a horse, but that's Pumpkin Party. That's interesting.
And really help
soon. First and only VP debate. What are our? We got 2 minutes.
So yes, they can matter.
What are our prognostications here?
Outsized meaning because
what do you think? What are you betting on here, Marcus?
I mean, honestly, I am.
All of them seem so frustrated.
I think that both of them are probably going to do a good job of completely avoiding any question whatsoever.
Yes.
And then just talking shit about each other in their own prepared, canned ways.
So it's interesting.
Yes,
and people say, they like to say, conventional wisdom, these vice presidential debates don't matter. And maybe they did.
I think
that might be true, Hank, actually.
That's exactly right.
I think it's also just like,
I think Vance may outplay like Walz's like liberalism because he's just a freak fucking groiper that's been in debate group chats forever.
Especially with the dynamic of no.
Oh yeah.
I think that's
because like
his
he's
whole thing.
like Walz is. I think JD Vance is probably going to try to bring up things
we have seen
that are over the top and ridiculous and blah blah blah.
Hammered big time.
But
worth noting also, this is the first.
It's going to sound weird, and Walz is going to be able to call it out as being weird.
Yeah.
Mics will be on tonight.
because it
It's
is.
going to make a huge difference in terms of expectations based on what we saw in the
Also, I think JD Vance is definitely going to talk shit about the Iran attack today.
As necessary, but it's that.
Well, that's my biggest fear is that most of this turns into a who loves Israel the most and wants to support genocide competition.
Crazy.
It's a quick poll.
I think
there should be.
there's a non-zero chance of that happening, and that's not
Well,
great.
it is the top of the hour now, 9 p.m. here in New York City.
Man.
We're just seconds away from
Not
tonight's
great.
Vice
Seconds away,
presidential
Lester.
debate between
Wow.
Ohio Republican Senator J.D.
Yeah.
Vance and Minnesota Democratic
believe we're
Governor
just
Tim
seconds
Walz.
away.
That's right. It is also potentially, if you haven't noticed, possibly the last debate we will see before Election Day. Election Day now.
Oh shit, this is going to be the last debate we'll see, huh? Trump's not going to agree to another one.
Here and what people will be looking at and what we'll all be talking about in a little while. We will have in-depth analysis once the debate concludes.
That's crazy.
Here on NBC. But tonight's event is hosted by CBS News in their studio in New York, just a few blocks from here.
Yeah, and as the last debate was between their running mates, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, there's no audience in there tonight. So each candidate is going to have
No
2 minutes for their
audience.
answers, and then there's a rebuttal. And the
like that.
moderators have said, Lester, there will be some fact-checking, but they're really counting on the candidates to fact-check each other.
And as we noted, unlike the last debate, microphones will not be muted, but the network says they reserve the right to mute the candidates. So that'll be an interesting process as they go along.
Okay, the vice presidential debate about to be on.
all
Let's
right.
go to CBS
That's interesting.
Network Studios.
Yeah, mute
What's
the candidate.
here in the heart of Manhattan and
Little
watch
mute.
this debate.
Presidential debate.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm down.
Good evening. I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining
Oh, yeah, that's
us
right. They have a
tonight's
QR
CBS
code for the
News
fact
Vice
checking. It's the
Presidential
dumbest
Debate.
fucking thing.
We want to welcome our viewers on CBS.
Yeah.
networks here
Yeah,
in
you
the
can
US.
you can grab the QR code on your phone while you're watching.
Yeah, it's a
Are
super
they telling
new
the
thing.
truth? Let me check on my phone.
Introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic
It's a super new cool thing. Okay, you got to open up your camera and then you get the
tonight.
get the QR code
the first time.
in the box.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Click the link.
I'm Margaret Brennan.
All right.
In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate, these are the rules that both campaigns.
Oh wow, 2 women moderators. JD's already on the back
will be
foot.
directed at one candidate who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will have 2 minutes.
I mean,
rebuttal.
he is like
Each candidate will
Mike Pence couldn't be in that room, so like,
Mother at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
teach people what moderators do.
To mute the candidates' microphones to maintain
MAGA is still
moderation. I'm ready.
Yeah, MAGA is still going to want to like burn down your house at the end of this, no matter what you say. You know, like I don't know why they keep trying
Let's
to.
get started.
Yeah.
Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora.
Christ. All right.
Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action.
You sure about that?
President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time.
Christ.
Governor
what?
Walz, if you were in this situation, would you say yes or oppose?
They're going to have nuclear weapons next week, folks.
That's not true at all.
2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Iran, Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental and ending the humanitarian crisis.
Now J.D. Vance is going to call him a
Gaza.
bitch and be like, no, you
But
actually love
the
Hamas,
expansion of
idiot.
Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack.
Wow.
But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment.
That's
but
way
it's
too
not
low,
just
buddy.
that. It's
Come
those
on.
that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous.
This is a better
His Chief
line.
of Staff John Kelly
this is a better
said
line.
that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors
This is it.
said
Like,
he should
cook
be
him with his
nowhere
fucking,
near the White
you
House.
know.
Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together.
This is overworked.
Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit, because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social
my
Security
working
help to
class
raise
family
me.
would have fought
And she raised
her
me
on,
in
I'll tell
part
you
because
that
my
much.
own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here.
My favorite
asking to be your vice
subject
president
in
with
high school
extraordinary
was social
gratitude for this
studies.
country, for the American dream.
I
that
had
made
my
it
first
possible for
drink
me to
when I was
live my
17
dreams.
years old.
And
I
most
kissed a
importantly,
girl.
I know that
Apparently
a lot
makes
of
a
you
hell of a
worry
chicken
about the
masala.
chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes.
Brother, you
that if
guys
we get
love
better
war.
leadership
Talk about how
in
you
the
want to
White
fuck
House,
up
if we get Donald Trump
Iran.
back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence.
He listed
People
off
were
3
afraid
people
of
that
stepping
worked
out
for
of
him.
line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris
Unfrozen
administration.
assets.
Where they use that money.
Unfrozen
They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back.
That's what we're doing right now with Israel.
Now, you
It's
asked
putting
about a
stability
preemptive
in the
strike,
region.
Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Donald Trump was in office. Sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership.
Why didn't Biden get back into it?
An American aircraft in international airspace.
Talking about Tim.
Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump, who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years. And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure.
It's Trump
we talk
and
about
Biden. Kamala Harris actually has very little to do with any of this.
Where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself.
The most powerful position in the world, Vice President of the United States.
I'm 40 years old. When was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to.
I don't know about that one.
Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene.
Well, that's what it was like. Assassination of Soleimani, pulling out of the JCPOA, and the Abraham Accords. This is why, under Trump, those decisions, that's why we're here.
Hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane, because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild.
Robust federal response. You're going to vote for that, Senator Vance?
And Appalachia, all across the Southeast, they need their government to do their job. And I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America, because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down. You just made that up. That's not a real thing. And the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane. And my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors, no partisanship. They work together. So all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover. But we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Global?
Created jobs all across the country. 2000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio. Taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there.
I mean, like solar panel production, China's beating the shit out of us. When it comes to like wind smoke.
What the president has said is that if the
Democrats, we don't do big projects well,
Kamala Harris,
like we can get some wind farms, but we're not going to push
the climate change is serious. What they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States. Being made overseas in China, especially the components.
All right, dog, build the infrastructure and build this fucking
the environment
man.
Cleaner. You've got to invest in more energy.
Make the economy dirty.
Facility in the past 40 years.
Is he dumb or is he just blatantly racist?
That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil, but the folks know, and like I said, again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure
allows us to think about?
How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of?
We commissioned a study
and to take the oil company
look into having a committee.
Say, give me money for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issue for American voters. Senator Vance campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil?
Oh, no innocence.
2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. States. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels.
Not that American.
You've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies.
So the question is, would you separate parents from
re-implement
kids?
Deportations? Yeah. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of criminals, which is
exactly what I does now. Like, this is
a form of crime. What does that mean?
This is how the process works now.
And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers.
Then whoever else they can sweep up along the way.
If they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border.
Is he talking about?
Fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all.
They never left.
Congratulations. We did it.
Do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things, regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest increase in opioid deaths in our nation's history. 30% decrease in Ohio.
I will say, the fentanyl thing, entirely true. I'd love to meet them on that talking point.
Immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state, a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we have the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Langford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans
James Langford principally keep people out of the fucking country.
This is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents. Detection for drugs. DOJ money to speed up the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as America wants and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no. Told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him what would Donald Trump talk about?
He was supposed to be the nice one.
Some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall.
And we want to do
it. Pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules. And it is a disgrace, and it has to stop.
Ask him one more time.
I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number.
It's so crazy how suddenly the vice president
and now
became the most powerful fucking official in the whole nation.
Religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't
none of these things happen.
Schools that are overwhelmed.
I love
it's
making
got to
shit
stop,
up,
and
man.
it will when Donald Trump is president
Senator,
again.
your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS
He didn't
News
answer your
polling,
question.
which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look,
they're Nazis.
We fix this issue.
We have a fucking, society of Nazis. I don't know. That's the
don't want to
answer.
solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
I don't mind it.
Tim,
Governor,
it's a good way to start to tear him apart from Donald Trump.
The only thing I don't like is like, why would you say? Like, I think JD Vance wants to. Like, no,
as a sitting
JD Vance started was the one that started this shit. Like, he's bringing it to the campaign. So like,
said
like,
repeatedly,
beat his ass too.
Would
you can see what
executive action.
Tim Walz is trying to drive a wedge in between the idea of JD Vance and the idea of Donald Trump. He's just like, I think that all Republicans can just be reasonable.
Many of the changes that you would actually
hitting JD Vance as a flip-flopper is a better way to do it. I think that's better. That's way better. Beat his ass. Don't say, oh, come over to our side.
Or Kamala Harris has been. And it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help.
They just want to beat those children.
Yeah, they just want to whip migrants to, and put up murder buoys.
If you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico. You've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz
is all illegal.
Community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's yokels that were unable to get employment there any longer because manufacturing have moved out. Shut up. But I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have
people
1
that
minute
didn't
to
even
respond.
want these fucking jobs, man.
It is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. Look, I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it.
And there's in parentheses,
it's funded,
not
it's supported by the people who do it, and it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
I think it's important.
The economy, thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application.
Don't let him do this.
One app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status.
There's a crime app. I assume you've seen Westworld season 3.
not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret.
Yeah, no, keep it in.
You know about the dark web, Margaret?
We have so much to get to.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we
CBP
want to have
app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen,
he's still talking.
He's muted
because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process.
Incredible.
Nora.
Oh, wow. At first they could hear him. They just could JD's when you heard him.
Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan. So let's talk about
this. Is great. Yeah. No, they should have just. Why didn't they just cut his mic earlier?
Includes billions in tax.
He said, "Hey, we have to move on," and he just kept talking.
Housing,
cut his mic. Move on.
The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class.
Oh my God, they do. How are they going to pay for it?
We both grew up in that. We understand.
How are we going to pay for the
listening tonight?
Your weapons deal. That should have been the worst. First question.
Marcus, come on.
You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as
have a government insulin production
Minnesota, 12% of the houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, "You're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut." He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it. It would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best. More people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly,
I think that actually people lose in not mentioning the fact that like a lot of the Biden bills, they did marginally increase taxes on the wealthy, and a lot of that stuff is actually paid for. They should just say that as well. Like that's not bad.
Absolutely.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies, and what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plan, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic
inflation was during COVID,
I say,
right? The 1.5% inflation,
rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts, but if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about.
He's just lying off of the vibes.
Stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has
common sense? Very, very detailed and smart policy. Thank you,
was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts. Said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts, but those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that.
That was Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell.
Countries to Mexico.
Experts didn't do that.
That was Newt Gingrich. That was right. Like that was the establishment politicians making trade deals.
Bill Clinton did that. Like fucking,
our own nation that it would.
Someone thought that was a good idea.
Did that shit, man.
And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got three beautiful little kids at home. 7,
I mean, that's the thing, though, is that like with the chips and science shit, like that, like
look, so many of the drugs
they do have an easy comeback
in the
for
bodies of our children.
I mean, they can try absolutely
by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop.
As much shit starting under Trump as like that's where it's like these are all just talking points at this point.
Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that are overseas.
Putting together his head.
Agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics show that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And
was there a minimum wage bill under Trump?
Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not.
And then you wrote a book calling her a piece of shit.
We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on health care then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions.
This is not true.
We want to ask you about your leadership qualities.
The hell are you talking about,
Governor
lady?
Walz.
You just made that up.
You said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989.
Finally.
Radio media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year.
Yeah.
Can you explain that discrepancy?
Thank God.
Well, and to the folks out there who didn't
Thank
get
God
at the
we're
top of
addressing
this,
this.
look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn.
Did you call us Tiananmen Square?
My community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done,
reverted to the
working on
sub-speech.
veterans
He doesn't know what
benefits.
to do
And
here.
then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything. Many times
Who cares if he lied about it? I don't know.
In the
Whatever.
rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life. I learned a lot about
I've only been
China. I
two.
hear the
Who
critiques
cares?
of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with
Who gives a
us.
shit?
I guarantee you,
Embellish
he
a little.
wouldn't
Have
be,
fun in life.
praising Xi Jinping about COVID, and I guarantee you, he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community, and then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said.
Yeah.
So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Yeah.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate, Donald Trump, unfit for the nation's highest
So
office.
you've got 30-year-old Tiananmen Square quote.
I know you've said, you've
and
asked
then
many times.
you called
and
your
said
running
you
mate
regret those
Hitler.
comments.
These are the same.
You then voted for Donald Trump in 2020.
This is the same.
The Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear?
Wow.
You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come
become a senator
and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, I've been a United States senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society.
I mean, Republicans had
for senators and congressmen to whine about
the first 2 years of Trump's presidency.
So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump.
Why couldn't the Republicans pass a bill?
I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration. It's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers.
No, we undercut the
our
wages of
country
American
stands
workers
up
normally.
for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying
undercuts
Americans a fair wage.
the $2.50
Thank you.
wages of American inmates.
After
and that's wrong.
You signed a bill into law that
they can't buy ramen on that.
Workers, they're coming over
in the
from
nation
fucking
they can't buy ramen on that.
Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support?
Yes or no?
I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says. But look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind.
That's
I mean, like, that's the thing is like, just say yes. If that's what a doctor says, yes. This happens.
Put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade. 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women. We trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place.
And the person that was in the abusive relationship
do on the public policy front just to give women more more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy.
Why?
And I think that's what makes the most sense. In a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy.
Different strokes for different folks. Things are different in different states.
It's wild that he.
What the fuck are you talking about?
It's wild that he has a friend.
Built different.
Made the accusation wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you.
Are we a fucking tribe of like warring sects, or are we a goddamn country? Shut up, you idiot.
Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration Roe versus Wade. When you
could you imagine
Harris talk about this subject, and you hear me
being born in a zip code and that's
exactly the same.
Determining
Donald Trump
everything about your life? Could you imagine
to get the political right of this? I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
First of all, I never supported a national ban. I did, during when I was running for Senate in 2022, talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, one of the things that's changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. Yeah. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have
That's what you learned from that.
Young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I
earn the trust back.
Pro-family policies.
This is crazy because he doesn't say anything. He just says earn the trust back.
Accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor,
trust us, then they'll
I'm
be
going to
fine.
respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that, too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
that's
whether you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Yes, force
This
them,
is one where
Tim.
there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this.
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
No, she's actually not proposing any of those.
You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate.
I think he'll take it.
I told you, he's just going to be a slimy little fucking groiper debate lord, man.
Yeah. This shit
Exactly
sucks.
the path that here is a little treat for you, chat. I feel like you all should enjoy one or two of the good tweets coming out of the night. That's for you while we sit here and talk. So I don't know, man. Like, Walls, you know.
No. You're just gonna be talking to chat. I gotta pee.
Okay, yeah, go do your thing. Walls, maybe a little less on the ball than I think people might have hoped. JD Vance just kind of a fucking freak about this. On mobile, I can't see the tweet. I'm not gonna read it out to you, Ginger. I'll just put it in the mod chat for later. Yeah, I don't know, man. Because this is the problem that Democrats run into is you can say all the things that are true. You know, you can say all the things that are verifiable. Yeah, absolutely. And you just hope that your voters resonate with that. Meanwhile, JD Vance is just going to lie and be a little smarmy fuck and sit around and rules lawyer, you know? And just eat up your time with that. Eat up your time with being a little fucking pedant, you know? I don't know. You're getting JD Vance to have Tim Walz agree to how much we need this fucking right-wing, far-right fucking border policy bill. Like, what are we doing, man? It's fucking useless. JD's a slime. I need Walls to stop agreeing with that monster. Yeah, it's crazy, Ginger. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the I don't know what the solve is for Walls here. Oh boy, they're doing okay, so we got 1 minute and 45 seconds. Perfect. Thanks. There you go. Zoot put it in chat for you all, since mobile users can't, you know. I don't know, dude. I'm not sure how things are going so far. I'll be honest with you, I don't really think it matters. It's a vice presidential debate, you know? It is going to be a thing. If anything, I guess you get a look at like JD Vance and the kind of politician that he'd like to be in the future when he eventually runs for the Republican ticket again. You get that, you know? You get an idea of what he's going to look like on the field. It's going to suck, you know? He's a weird little fucking freak. So he'll fuck off, right? No, I think he's going to be around for a while. Sorry. Like, it'd be cool if he just fucked off forever, but I think he'll he's young, you know. I think he'll float around and do more shit in the future. Yeah. Trump Vance lose, do you think we'll be free of him? Probably not. I don't think. Marcus, I don't think so, right? I think JD Vance is going to be around even if Trump loses.
Oh, Vance?
Yeah.
I mean, he's at least a senator for another 4 years.
Yeah. Like, I think he would run again during another Republican fucking cycle.
Patriotic. The vote is
patriotic.
This November.
I don't know if he would win, but I think he would run the primaries again.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if I'm JD Vance, I'm not trying to stick around as senator.
No,
like, being a senator is the brokest JD Vance has been.
Yeah. We're back with tonight's vice presidential
in
debate.
Best, I don't know,
joining us for
decade.
analysis now. Back to the debate.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course.
State's issue.
If a kid steals a gun,
state's rights.
It's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous.
Or buys them a gun.
Sort of speak as
on their birthday
of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade.
Wow.
And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such
buy them guns
and such
joy, send them to school
at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better.
Yeah, it sounds like you're pretty bent up out of shape at it.
We need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90%, and some of the statistics we've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number...
Where are the guns made, you
dip-ass? Yeah.
Where are these guns made?
Not in the U.S. Definitely not our gun culture. Yeah,
protect our kids. And I think the answer is, and I say this.
Why did AMLO do this to us?
I don't want my kids to go to school and in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security.
No gun violence during the Trump administration. Is that what he's going to say?
Better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers because
the provisioning of our schools.
Magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys. It just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Wow.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of
JD Vance literally made.
And they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead. And they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there. But our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks. And we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go when we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills? They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight,
policy have either of them said?
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that you're 17.
Have either of them listed any policy?
I appreciate it. Okay, Christ have mercy. It is awful, and I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland.
Very civil debate they're having here. It's great.
Frankly, the differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland is okay. First of all,
Danny Vance is about to get into a 30-minute history about Finland and how much he respects the country and its racial purity.
Way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety.
We don't talk enough about Finland and the
crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem. But I do think it's a big piece
the
of
word homogeneity is going to come out
of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids. It doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here. But I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault
like Dick Cheney.
But only late in your political career did you change your
position?
He
shot a guy.
Yeah, I sat in that office with
lock him up.
Parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves.
That's real.
Ding. We have, and we should look at all of the issues. Making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think Tim, as we start looking for a scapegoat, sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns, and there are things that you can do about it.
Been waiting for them to just say that shit. Yeah, that's great.
I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora.
These are protecting the Second Amendment.
A contributor to inflation, the higher cost of housing and rent.
He's really good at the kitchen table.
There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz,
the juxtaposition helps him quite a bit.
$55,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this.
What the fuck did you just say, lady? Are you drunk?
The problem we've had is that we've
been handing out money. It's a tax fucking cut.
Or a tax credit.
Write-off, dude. What are you talking about?
Around. Those are not folks living in those houses.
Nobody gets that money.
That house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is
that's completely gone now. Well, I mean, what he said is true. The down payment thing,
increase in stock.
The market is so fucked and tight, and it doesn't matter.
A state program to make sure
they say VA home loan, and
we get it back from people.
Push it off to the side.
Here's what we know: people with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of this plan will provide?
Where are you going to build up?
Crazy. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants
in your backyard, Brenda.
Millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we
What the fuck are you talking about?
Prices.
It's the immigrants. It's always going to be the immigrants.
Massive increases in
these immigrants are putting cash offers on homes in your area.
Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're bringing suitcases full of cash to your realtor meeting. They're taking over the HOA.
If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable.
Look at your next open house, okay? Adriel's already made an offer before he even walked in the door.
Prices, as Donald Trump says,
they're paying half in cash, half in fentanyl. I've seen it. I've seen it a lot.
40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive.
Yeah, man.
Open up American energy, you have pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods, too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country.
No.
We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be...
Dog, are you like talking about building a new town? Because like we should be you can't just throw houses.
Like, what infrastructure are you putting around these new fucking homes, man?
Allegation that the vice president
build out fucking train infrastructure to get them to cities. What are you talking about?
Tree houses. They'll
we
figure
have
it out
federal land that's currently protected by these fucking hippies in the wetlands. We can just build on that.
Drill and build houses in the same federal land. And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around.
J.D. Vance exploring a new Trail of Tears in 2024 in Oklahoma.
Unless
we got a lot of federal land down there. People are barely using it.
Federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that.
Nationalizing housing market. Okay, Tim.
So we're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem.
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have
thieves,
federal
genociders,
explorers. Harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. Actually, protesters. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a
just
governor.
giving houses. They're not even buying them. Wow.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily
We're giving free housing to people coming in.
Many of those are local. Many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes
Good question. Get his ass.
Governor, thank you, gentlemen. We have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis.
No, I mean,
but Nora,
thank you. Fucking hell.
The top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former
Because all of a sudden, like, the vice president's been like a demigod for most of this debate. Like, how does the vice president position do any of the things that they say?
You've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions
Well, there's an acceptable 14% of any society.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of
you see, the unpure will be thrown off a cliff.
I believe, members
we're going to save in the long term.
Health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. Look, it's very simple common sense. I think it's Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress. You're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is
so you don't have a plan.
Partisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced
this is
about healthcare.
Not a good line to take.
You try to buy something, and
with the $35 insulin for Medicare,
it's crazy.
Tim Walz should be able to kick your ass with this
one. A little bit more choice, and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these.
That's an interesting word to say, I think.
Of the United States.
Say more on that.
A really good argument. Salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along.
We should experiment on the chronically ill.
Trump, of course, tell me more. With everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do.
Didn't John McCain,
Donald Trump has earned
stop the Republicans from completely getting rid of it?
He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Wow.
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now,
at least someone knows the history.
What that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look,
in 2 years.
And when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept.
Got his ass.
Because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Old gray,
Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions.
You're fucked. That's true, but
look, we currently have regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is
the marketplace
not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these.
What is he even talking about?
Ensue. Yeah. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher. And he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, the system works.
It gets higher and higher every year.
That's just how it works. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. Like he was saying, like they got the exchanges
should be free to do this. Well, then
no, they didn't.
Individual mandate's a good idea.
You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When
what if we had universal?
Correct.
Asking pre-ACA.
Think of that.
Get people out. Look.
Think if everyone was covered.
That they need to be on health care. People expect
pretty big risk pool
to be there.
Good.
And when we
are say the biggest risk pool,
we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret.
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss.
Don't let this fucking asshole talk again, please.
There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents.
Because we're demons.
Governor Walz, you said that if Democrats win both the White House
and J.D. Vance is going to bring up
this is a day one priority
just
for you.
Telling people have a Indian grandmother
required to pay workers
and she'll do all the work for you, right?
Their newborns. You have 2 minutes.
That's his. That was his solution.
Negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start. The family works better. We stay in their employers. We get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota, and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue. Those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some places, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated?
This motherfucker should have been the candidate.
You have 2 minutes.
Like, why isn't that an actual plan?
And colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look,
family
if you
care
look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of child care model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with child care.
It's just the school choice argument again. Fuck you. You're a weird freak.
Families in your neighborhood.
Nobody thinks to themselves, oh, I can have multiple. No. What if we just had fucking family leave as an option?
And how we deliver family
a certain amount. If you don't use it, fantastic. It gets funneled in other days.
Acceptable. And, you know, of course, Sam and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work.
Yeah, we need more choices.
Kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country.
We need you to bring your kids to work choice.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for
penitentiaries count in that?
Families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, child care options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Wow.
Can you clarify how that will solve the child care shortage?
Well, Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look.
So we're going to give money to these fucking, bullshit VCs and, corporations that promise that they're going to be, we're going to third party it.
Way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator.
And they're going to take cash vouchers and
tax
shit.
Credit proposals.
So instead of a K through 12, you just have a
credit for newborns and $3,000
care
schools,
care and education system.
Campaign has promised
for everyone.
Realistic.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
Members of Congress,
that's just what it means.
Buddy, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case.
Oh, my God.
The issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not able to go to businesses. Sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others.
So it's a third thing? It's not even that important?
Contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on.
And not answer these questions.
Because you ask it. What President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's
in the marketplace of ideas.
What Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said
we should
that on
talk
January
about it on
6th,
Twitter.
Protesters
He said fight like hell.
On January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies.
Dog, I thought you were going to fucking throw immigrants under the bus again, but censorship is fucking libertarian loser.
My uncle is being censored at the Thanksgiving dinner table
that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard.
So crazy to brag about, brother.
Yeah, dog.
They don't agree.
The Democrats of all Democrats.
We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale.
Engaged in censorship.
She's done it over a number of other issues, and that to me is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with.
Why? Why do you think there was commonality? What are you talking about? Why'd they make him stop saying weird?
I think we need to tell the story.
It's a bad campaign. I fucking hate Jen Dillon, actually.
I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over.
Pence.
I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can.
You pat him back and say, good game.
That's what was at stake here. Right. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret? Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders.
What do you disagree with that on?
Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I mean,
Donald Trump literally didn't show up, though, for inauguration.
He'll have my prayers
on January 20th to shake hands
whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections.
Yes.
Hillary Clinton in 2016.
Let's go, baby. We're doing it again.
By Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like 500
buttery mails,
Facebook ads.
Buttery mails.
For a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
2016, I'm talking about Hillary Clinton not accepting the election. 2024,
I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened.
The Democrats worked with racists.
And all of us say there's no place
and gave up the working class.
Massive repercussions.
That's how we got here, Tim.
To stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something. That's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. But this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously,
Jesus Christ,
more problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government. And
ask him to answer the question, Tim. Get him to.
I can't keep going until you answer the question, my friend.
I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't.
Who won the election?
Crowded theater. That's the test. That's the test.
Don't move on.
Fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to keep people off of Facebook.
Dude. Come on, man.
That toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the
who you thought they were.
Right now, what the fuck is happening?
Let him off the hook.
1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know on Facebook. What I do know is
get him back on the fucking. Do you think he won? Yes or no?
And now again, and this I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not. It's not anything anywhere other than in.
Put it back on him, Tim.
Because look,
put it back on him, Tim.
Made that decision to certify that election. That's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News
closing statements, I guess.
My God, dog. I mean,
powerful stuff. You know,
this shit.
Finally,
I'll say, look, for one thing, Tim Walz was a defensive coordinator, and I believe it because this motherfucker doesn't know how to attack.
No, absolutely.
He has no idea.
He's been on defense most of the night.
He had him, especially with the who won the election.
Yeah,
just say it.
Cracking.
Just say it. Yeah. Who won the election, and then you could go on and whatever you want. But you nailed them to the fucking wall on that one.
No, man. Yeah, it's crazy. I have to, here's the thing. I'm looking at the debate prep, right? For JD Vance, the debate prep was completely figure out how to tie it to immigrants, okay? Anything that they throw at you, you throw it back, but add immigrants to it.
Yeah.
And for fucking Tim Walz, it was well, don't try to go too hard on him, okay? Keep talking about how we're all fellow Americans and we need to get through this together through unity,
this is
through
that
strength,
shit.
you know?
This is that Joe Biden fucking bullshit because this is Joe Biden shit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying.
My good friend across
fucking campaign staff.
My good friend across the aisle, he's got the hood on now, but he's a nice guy. This type of shit of I'm sure we agree, blah 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 blah. I mean, if you're gonna make it a tactic to kind of actually drive some type of division, it needs to be a whole lot more solidified. Because that's where it's if there's any fucking policy that was just oh hey, he says this, and then Tim Walz goes oh no, we are exactly in agreement, I agree. And then you state your position as if he agrees to it.
Yes, exactly.
I agree this. I agree that.
I agree with his position.
I agree with
your
JD
position
Vance.
that you fucking made up. He's on board with now.
Because that's where, with the whole bullshit care or family care bullshit that he said, it's all mealy mouth shit. So you say, hey, he said he wants to invest in family care. I agree. Any family member that's helping to take care of one of their loved ones should get paid at least a full wage. And speaking of full wage, we should increase the minimum wage. But at the end of the day, just take whatever the bullshit he said, tie it in, and say I agree, and then make it up, and just fucking inject good shit. But this whole thing of oh, well, I'm sure you want to get rid of gun violence too.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
That's silly.
I don't know. Yeah, just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the broad scheme of things. If fucking, VP debates are even less consequential than candidate debates. But yeah, it's disappointing to watch,
Yeah.
I just kind of like, if anything, I'd say the biggest thing that came out of this thing for either of them is it's very clear that JD Vance is preening for his own spot. All right, like I think that's the biggest thing that I've noticed this entire time is JD Vance is trying to make a case for himself and much less for Trump. He is making a case for himself in the future in the 2028 playing field.
I mean, we'll see.
No, I mean, yeah, we'll see. Who knows? Any fucking thing can happen in 4 years, but that is what he's doing right now.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I don't know what his fucking future is with the Republican Party. That's absolutely what he's doing.
Is real. Let's break down what we know. And
the thing is if Trump loses,
the generation of now is NBC.
He's going to get the blame.
Yeah, maybe.
They're going to blame him.
I don't know. I think they've separated away from
Trump
the
is
first
going to
month
blame
or
him.
so, you know, where it was like, oh, he's the most unlike shit ever. Like, I don't know. Maybe not.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. It is now time for the closing statements.
Thank
Senator
goodness.
Vance won a virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are
coin
first. You have
toss?
2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly,
they have real coins.
If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift. A whole bunch of folks in between there.
Jesus.
And they don't all agree on everything, but
Have
they
some
are
respect
truly
for yourself.
optimistic people. They believe in a positive future in this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I
You
have to
should have
tell you
shame in this country.
that better than it is the sense of optimism.
That's why. That's why.
That works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class. And she's centering you at the heart of that.
Wow.
All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother.
Tim Walz talks about a lot of oil and gas and
because Ohio gets pretty cold at night, and because
liquid natural gas, right?
Tight. Yeah. And I believe
we're pumping a lot of it.
Wants to be your next vice president. That we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. Wow. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now,
I can't believe this guy went to go last. That's so crazy.
When she stands before
none of this is going to be answered. Just fucking lies, huh?
Cool. She's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me
buy a MAGA hat.
What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. but they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well.
New direction, but
Trump.
an old direction.
For me,
Got it.
vote for Tim Walz. I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Rooting for
Senator
you.
Vance, thank you.
Good job.
Thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Mark Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder.
Wow. What a time. You know? I feel like I learned so much.
I hate both of them. I hate the moderators.
Yeah. I hated it. I hate a lot of that, honestly. There were some decent moments for Walz every now and then, but honestly, boy, what a
and that's where my question was like, this dude seemed way better like when he first came onto the scene.
He got neutered by the
guy looks
DNC,
like ass.
man. Like they were like, hey, listen, you can't actually be fun. I know you were having fun with it, but you can't do that.
Yeah, no, this shit sucked. I hated it. You should have, and like, my good friend across the aisle.
Right, just call him a fucking weirdo, man. Just call him a dumb racist idiot. Like, I'm sorry, it's
and like where the things JD Vance said about fucking Trump in the past, like hit that. He should have hit that more. Actually, the whole election thing, I don't understand why he gave that up.
Yeah,
when you said, hey, do you think he won or not? And he wouldn't answer it. When they don't answer, like that's blood in the water.
Yeah, that's easy.
I don't understand how they don't get that. Like that's blood in the water. Oh, you refused, or I don't know if you were too scared to. Maybe you forgot to answer my question.
Yeah.
Did you think Donald Trump won the election or not? And like. Make the fucking moderators get involved. This is a fact check?
Yeah.
Who won the election, moderators? Can you get them? Like, what? He won't even answer the question. He nailed his ass to the wall on that. I mean, that's the thing too. Is like, what's very frustrating is Dance Vance says some bullshit.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, these, whatever policies are not going to work, whatever. Tim Walz comes out and says, this is what they've been doing in Minnesota. And this is not just Tim Walz, right? They get a 1-seat majority. And there's a lot of legislators, there's a lot of fucking people who worked on the ground in Minnesota to actually have these policies put forward. And it's nowhere close to what we need to solve these problems that we have in this world.
Right.
But in Minnesota, like there are just better housing rates, like the education gets more support. Like these things just are there. It's there. The school breakfast and lunches, these things exist. He can only campaign on those things as a defense of the Republican demonization.
Yes.
He can't actually campaign on these things. And it's just like, what the fuck are we even doing? Because all of that shit sound dope to me.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I just whatever. We're gonna see Walz for another month, and then he's gone forever. So,
correct.
Doesn't matter. In the grand scheme of things, maybe he'll get a cushy like, oh hey, go hang out with Minnesotans at like a turkey trot or something. But like, man, that's kind of it.
Send him down to Brazil to meet with like Lula and
let's go. Yeah. Get him with Claudia Sheinbaum, in the New Mexico administration. Get him like hanging out.
Yeah.
Socialist pill my guy a little bit,
Yeah.
I don't know, like whatever. Like it's fine. It was, I know that's just what VPs are, Chad. It's just like you're not going to hear from either of these people. It doesn't matter who wins. You won't hear from either of them after.
The real question is, what is the ability? What is the ability for Tim Walz to be a Dick Cheney?
Yeah.
opposite with Bush's.
Now I hear you. Can we get Tim Walz to shoot someone on a hunting trip? Yeah. Okay. All right. And who do we got bets on? There's a lot of house to clean. Sure.
Maybe Blinken is Secretary of State again.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right. We need to get the fuck up out of here because I need to get to sleep. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, you're fine. Yeah. I agree with you. Hold up. Give me a second. I'm going to stop recording in a second, but obviously with the, like, subscribe, follow us on all the ManCon places. All right, chat? Yeah. Yeah, all the places. We'll have an actual podcast for you next week now that I'm not having COVID anymore.
And I will be back in the lair.
Back in the lair next week. That's so true. Yeah, no silver lining. Hey, go eat the fucking new Taco Bell Disha hot box. You should do that while you're out there, Marcus. Go get yourself a little Taco Bell.
The silver lining, only a quarter of the debate was used to just be pro-Israel. So
yeah, that's so true. Yeah, my silver lining is that we literally only had like 5 seconds over the span of time of Tim Walz glazing like the fucking military. So that's cool.
Not bad.
Yeah. All right.
Peace. Yeah.